Oh, hello. My name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. Okay, this is kind of a different / weird video. It is the morning time. I am getting ready for work, and I'm going to be doing my makeup while I talk to you. The reason I am doing this way is that I don't want to spend too much time on this, and because like bitch has to get to work. I'm hoping that sorry, the light is weird because it's morning. We're all just gonna have to be okay with the weird flashing sometimes. But I've got to go to work, so I won't be able to like sit here and like really like get into the minutia of it all. But I just wanted to hop on here because there has been like a Booktube controversy insofar as Booktube has controversies. And like this is one of the few dramas that I've seen that I feel like is worth addressing in some shape or form. And that essentially is that you probably have seen a lot of videos in your feed recently that is called "Is Booktube Racist?" Because I know I've seen a lot of them. I've watched a lot of them, and a lot of them have been really thought-provoking and really... That white scares me whenever I catch it in the viewfinder. I'm sorry. It's just like, we're real chatty, we're real informal today. A lot of them I think have been really thoughtful, and I appreciate, especially like all the people of color who have been making videos about this and trying to like educate people and kind of speak their truth and kind of try to explain like what is like the reality of just how day-to-day racism actually looks and what it actually involves in their lives. So I appreciate that. I don't feel like I have a lot to add to the conversation. I just wanted to like throw this out there. Actually, also, I'm gonna link below, like if you want to know like more specifics about the actual controversy involved, I'm gonna link a video from my friend Lauren at the Novel Lush, because she managed to be so righteously angry and yet so funny at the same time, and I think she does a good job breaking down like the particular racist incident that sparked a lot of this. I think she does a very nice job of kind of letting you know why this little girl done fucked up. I do want to just caveat though, the person involved appears to be quite young, and everybody is dumb in their youth. Not everyone is racist in their youth. I say that actually probably everyone is, whether or not they realize it, but not everyone makes a racist video in their youth. How about that? That's probably a better statement. So, you know, keep that in mind. But yeah, this little girl really done fucked up. And basically, again, the kind of question that's been floating around that I thought that I would just quickly address, because it has a very simple answer, is the question, is Booktube racist? And here's where, you know, 3 or 4 minutes in, you get the answer to my clickbaity title. Yeah. yeah, Booktube is racist. I don't think that should be surprising to people, though it seems to be. So this is why I'm making this video. I guess like I kind of want to try to make an argument to maybe some folks out there who maybe you're just not quite aware of like what racism is or how it affects like literally every part of society. And again, there's been a lot of really great, I think like people of color have been very patient in trying to explain this on Booktube. So I just thought that like I could speak to my fellow white people and just basically be like, I don't know what fantasy world you're living in, but like if you think that you have the same experience as a white booktuber as a person of color does on Booktube, like you're fooling yourself. And like, here's my polite but pointed plea for you to just like kind of disillusion yourself of that. Of course Booktube is racist, because Booktube is on YouTube, and YouTube is a part of American culture. I mean, like, it originated in America. It's not just an American platform, but like it originated out of America, and America is racist. Like, our entire system is racist. Our entire country was built, like, literally, it was founded in our Constitution on the systematic enslavement and oppression of people from Africa originally, or people whose recent ancestors were from Africa. Yes, Booktube is racist because America is racist. And so, like, it's racist on that level. And then like videos like this, just of the original controversy, remind you that it's also racist on a macro level, or a micro level rather. So it's not just systemically racist, which it clearly is. It's also racist in a micro level because somebody felt the need to make this video. Do you know what I mean? So I just want to be real clear that these questions about is Booktube racist, and like, I feel like a lot of our creators on Booktube who are people of color have like been very clear about that repeatedly over time. So like, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page about this, that like, yeah, Booktube is definitely racist. I also want to explain something real quick that, again, it's surprising to me that this needs to be said, but like, it does apparently. So I'm gonna say that as well. So like, one of the God, this is just even hard for me to talk about without laughing because it just is ludicrous and like so ahistorical and so, anyway. I think this does need to be explained because I think that a lot of I think like not actively hateful white people that I know, but like unconsciously racist, and again, we all have unconscious racial bias. Like literally everyone, including people, we all have unconscious racial bias. It's like a part of the human experience at this point. Something that needs to also be explained is that entitlement gets thrown around a lot as a bad word, because usually what we think of, God, I really am sorry about how this is blinking constantly, but again, them's the breaks. We're just making it work up here in my office. Entitlement gets thrown around a lot as a negative word. We tend to think of it as entitlement of like the spoiled rich kid who expects his daddy's gonna buy him a Porsche. That's usually kind of the sense people think of in terms of entitlement. I just got concealer all over my floor. It's so sad. Okay. And that, I agree, is noxious behavior and not cute, and yeah, sure, call that out where you see it. But I think that people forget that entitlement, in terms of like what it actually means, like its literal definition, means like something that you deserve, and this idea that you are acting in a way that you deserve something, basically. Entitlement in terms of like basic human rights and basic dignity and like basic access to things is not a bad thing. It's kind of the definition of human rights, right? It's in the American Constitution, it's defined as the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, well, what does that mean? It means that walking around on a day-to-day person, or on a day-to-day level as a person, you are entitled to be treated with dignity, to be treated with respect, to not be physically harassed, to have a reasonable ability to earn a living, and to have access to public goods. Like, do your deal. Basically, a lot of what the Constitution, at least in America, is about is like the right to be left alone and to just like go about your damn business. And when someone is acting entitled in that sense, it is not a bad thing, because they are like just saying like, dude, I am a human person and I deserve to be treated as such. Like that is not negative entitlement. The way that this is getting played out in Booktube is people of color are basically saying like, and I mean, I'm not trying to say that Booktube is like a human right. That's, somebody in the comments is going to do that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the parallel here is that let's just call Booktube a part of someone's pursuit of happiness. What they're saying basically is that, hey, when I'm like just trying to go about my goddamn day and like post my videos and whatnot, it's harder, like I get more negative response. Content that is of, let's say, roughly equal value or equal quality that I create is not given as much attention. People steal my ideas with impunity and like don't have any consequences for it. The specific controversy I believe that sparked this off was that more like booktubers of color were not invited to some sort of like book related screening of The Hate U Give, which goes into a larger discussion about the wholesale cultural appropriation of Black properties in America, for everyone's cultural enjoyment. And like, it's tricky because I want more people to see a lot of these things that are being appropriated because they're awesome and they like deserve a bigger audience. But the way in which they get a bigger audience is often to the detriment of the original community from which they came. So anyway, all that to say, like, entitlement seems to be something that's coming up quite a bit in this conversation. So I just wanted to first point out that entitlement is not necessarily a bad thing. The second thing I want to say is that I think that when, and this is like, again, me kind of like trying to do a little translation here for my fellow whites out there. And I'm not trying to white-splain racism. That's not my job. I'm literally like, I'm just giving you my thoughts and I'm trying to like maybe be a bridge, help people make a connection. Anyway, I think when a lot of white people hear entitlement in terms of anything related to race, like white privilege, or when like in this misguided, ignorant little girl was talking about people of color having a level of entitlement to something that she apparently feels like they don't deserve or like is beyond what they should be asking for. I think what a lot of white people hear when they hear white privilege is basically like, oh, well, what you have, you don't deserve. Like, people of color deserve it because of how they've been treated historically, and you don't. That's not what white privilege is saying. What white privilege means is that if we all have to run a race in life, okay? Like, all of us are doing the 100-yard sprint. But different parts of a person's being can disproportionately affect their ability to run that race. So nobody is denying that if you, like, let's just take like the height of privilege in our society as it exists today. Let's talk about a rich, white, straight man in America, okay? For whatever he is trying to achieve in life, he still has to run that 100 yards. Nobody's denying that that is effort and that takes work. And I think that's what people hear when they hear privilege. Nobody's saying that you don't have to work to get what you get, okay? What they're saying is that while you are just having to run, people in other categories are having to carry like 100-pound bag on top of having to run. And what is being asked for is like, girl, I don't want to carry this bag anymore. I just want to run my race. So when people have, sorry, I'm getting heated about this. I need to keep getting ready because again, mama's got to go to work. When creators of color on Booktube are talking about about white privilege or racism that they are experiencing, they're not negating the effort that white booktubers are putting into their channels. They're not saying like, oh, you haven't worked hard for what you have. You're, the 10,000 subscribers you just got because you were white. That's not what the statement is. What they're saying is, hey, if on a given day you started your channel at the same time that a person of color started theirs, if you had roughly the same equivalent of quality in your video, if you posted the same amount, if you were equally as engaged on like your comments, like all things being held equal, the white booktuber is going to grow faster. And then it becomes, I don't know if you understand, like if you know this about YouTube, but like the more subscribers you get, the easier it becomes to get more, if that makes sense. So like the hardest part of being on YouTube is the first, let's say like really the first 100 subscribers and then like, let's say the first 500 subscribers. That is like where it's really hard to grow. And a lot of what people of color who are creators on Booktube are saying is like, it is disproportionately hard for them to get out of that initial growth period. But then even once they have, like some of the best booktubers I watch are people of color. And I don't know how I don't want to really get into name calling here. I don't know. I just feel weird about that. But like, I look at their channels and I'm like, this is really good content. And like, sure, they have like a decent number of subscribers, but then I compare them to people who have a ton of subscribers. And I'm like, yeah, I think sometimes it's a little hard to understand that if you are not taking in race, which again gets back to my original point of like, is Booktube racist? Like, girl, yeah, it seems pretty self-evident. All that to say, I just wanted to, like, part of what I thought I could maybe help clarify here is that when we're talking about entitlement, when we're talking about racism on Booktuber, I think that if you're confused about why this is a conversation we're having, maybe do a little digging. Maybe do a little hey, Booktube, do a little reading. I would really highly recommend Stand From the Beginning by Ibram X Kendi. I know I've been recommending that book a lot, but it's genuinely like one of the few books that I've read in a long time that I'm like, pretty much everybody should read this. And the reason I say that is because I think he does a really good job of breaking down the history of racist ideas, the different types of racism that we have, because I think that part of what this controversy boils down to, and like, is Booktube racist, is that it's people of color having to remind white people basically over and over again that like, just because you aren't out like lynching someone, or you're not out like calling people slurs, or you even like are trying to be an ally and like you like, you know, are trying to promote diverse, but like none of that is addressing the underlying issue, which is like, Booktube is racist because our society is racist, and booktubers who are people of color, like when they put their face in a thumbnail, are just like on an unconscious level, people are inherently less likely to click on it. And that is racism. It may not be active, like conscious racism. It may not be like somebody actively hating them, but it's like it's them acting out the societal dance that has been enacted for hundreds and hundreds of years of people being trained to think of people of color as less intelligent, less worthy of success, less whatever. I mean, like, just lesser. Like, that's just what it boils down to, is that on an unconscious level, that is something that is always happening, and it doesn't go away just because we're on Booktube. Where, like, again, it generally is a very friendly place, and I think it's really cool that it's a place that really is trying, at least in terms of, like, its explicit text, to combat some of those forces. Like, I think that's great. And I think that most of the videos I've seen from people of color also think that that's great. But it's not enough, because it's still, we're not addressing, we're hoping to, we're like trying to create the world we want to see in terms of like shifting that underlying narrative. Like that's I think a part of what the change in terms of what we want to see in the explicit, or like the said part of our culture, in terms of like, hey, words we use matter, like what we say matters, because eventually we're hoping that the more we talk about this well, it will begin to actually change at a deeper level the way people think about things. And there's a lot of, you know, back and forth about whether or not that's an effective strategy, but it is a strategy, and I think it's one that, again, Booktube is trying to engage in a way that I think is cool. Like, especially because there's so many young people on Booktube. I say that like I'm a million years old, but like there's a lot of like teenagers and people in their early 20s. People, I mean, I'm a millennial, but I'm an older millennial. So like, you know, some of the younger millennials and Gen Z, it's really cool to see, like, even just my cousin she just turned 21, listening to the way that she talks about race and diversity and inclusion, like it's just different than people even my age, like let's say 10 to 11 years older than her, talk about that stuff. And I think that that's really exciting and hopeful. And I think it's cool that Booktube is a part of that cultural shift. So like, I'm not trying to negate that, and I don't think any of the people of color who have spoken about this are trying to negate that either. What the conversation is, like, that kind of change is not enough. And I guess maybe like, so I've answered the question, is Booktube racist? Like, girl, yeah, duh. To the white viewers of Booktube, or the white like creators on Booktube, I guess I just wanted to remind you that we can say yes to that question and don't need to feel like defensive about it, because we didn't start this fire. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is what was handed to us. There's a metaphor in a book called Come As You Are. I need to keep getting ready, girl. This is why I did this, because I knew I would ramble, and if I did not have a task that I needed to accomplish, i.e. get to work on time, this would just become a complete mess. But anyway, there's a metaphor in a book called Come As You Are, and it's about sexuality, about female sexuality. And she has a metaphor where she talks about every person's sexuality as being a garden that we receive when we're born. And in that garden is a lot of things. There's like biological things, so like your innate sexual orientation. There are like family things of how your family talked to you about sex, or talked about relationships, or talked about whatever. There are cultural things that you have no control over. So like, if you're gay and you live in a homophobic society, you don't have any control over that, but like, you have some internalized homophobia baked in there. If you're a woman, like, you have some internalized misogyny baked in there. Like, there's all these things that are given to you in your garden, and like, it just is. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have no control over it. That's what you've received. What you do have control over is, once you receive that garden, how you tend to it. And I think that that is a helpful metaphor for racism as well, and like these issues that I think can be really hard for people to talk about because they want to feel very defensive about it. If they're white, they want to feel like, well, like I'm not racist. Are you saying I'm racist? And it's like, yes, you are racist. Like you are. You like, even if you're trying to actively weed that out of your garden, it was given to you in your garden. And that's what a lot of like the discussion around this boils down to, is like, girl, it's in your garden. Like I applaud you and I'm thankful that you're trying to weed it out, but it's there and you're going to have to literally spend the rest of your life trying to weed it out, and you're never actually even going to be entirely successful. That doesn't negate the project of you trying to get it out of there, and it doesn't make you like inherently bad in terms of like, you got this garden, we all got this garden. But like to pretend that that's to either not weed it out or at least try is a problem. And then to be weeding it out, but then like try to pretend that you're not in the project of trying to do that, of like, oh no, I've done enough. Like I've weeded it out enough. Like it's fine, is also a problem. And that's what a lot of this, I think, discussion boils down to. I have no idea if I will actually post this because this is rambly. Low-key shocked that my makeup turned out okay. So that's good. At least I won't look a mess. But anyway, this turned out okay. Yeah, I know that this is like hard to talk about, and like I think I need to state and acknowledge if I've been racist in this in some way. Like that's entirely possible, and I'm sorry. I'm happy to have someone kindly point that out to me, because I'm trying to weed, but I know sometimes I pull at the wrong things, or I don't see other things that need to get pulled. So I welcome helpful critique. I think the reason I wanted to add my voice to this, because again, I feel like the POC creators on Booktube like got this. Like I appreciate their willingness to entertain this bullshittery. But I just felt like maybe sometimes the things, like again, sadly, sometimes things that people of color have said consistently and clearly don't get heard because they are people of color. It's like this really horrifying loop. So I thought that whatever boost I could give just by virtue of like looking like a ghost in my thumbnail, I would lend. I don't know if any of this made sense. Again, I'm not sure if I'm gonna post this or not, and I hope you guys don't mind me getting ready while I did this, because I thought this would be a good way to sort of like time box things and keep me from rambling too long. I guess I'll just leave you with this one last thing. My dad passed away recently, so, you know, I've been thinking a lot about him and things that he taught me. And I'm actually, so he was a 67-year-old man who grew up in Tennessee, like rural Tennessee. He grew up in the backwoods. At one point, like, they did not have food, water, electricity, 7 kids, 1 room house, like super poor. And there's a lot of people who grow up that way in my part of the world, and it makes them really bitter, especially when talking about things of race, because I think they feel that whole distinction between entitlement and white privilege, like that is very lost on them. And I think I'm really lucky because my dad was the first person in his family to go to college. Like, he is the definition of the American dream. Like, he, like, bootstrapped whatever. If you want to talk about, like, I mean, like I said, he came literally from nothing, and, like, when he died, the life he and my mother gave me is just extraordinary. Like, I went to private school. I, you know, studied abroad. I got a car for my 16th birthday. Like, they lived on a golf course. Like, I come from a tremendous amount of wealth privilege, like class privilege, that my father did not have and, like, worked very, very hard to give me. But that did not make him somebody who felt like he didn't have some level of privilege in getting it. Like, I remember so distinctly when he would first take me to go vote, he would say, okay, if you don't know who to vote for, always vote for the woman or the person who's not white, because they have had to work twice as hard to get here. He was so aware of how much he had to work to overcome a classism against him. He didn't know all of those social niceties. He didn't have, like I had, like a safety net of a parent who would, like, if shit, to this day, I'm really lucky. If I lost my job, if I lost everything I had, my family would take care of me. They could take care of me, and they would. And he did not have that. And that's a tremendous privilege I had that he did not have. He worked really hard to overcome that. But he was always aware of that 100-pound bag that he was carrying in his race. And he was aware that his 100-pound bag wasn't even as much as, like, women, gay people, non-white people had to carry for their race. Like, he was always very aware of that, and he would always be very explicit about, like, you have, like, part of, you guys don't know the name I go by on a day-to-day basis, but my day-to-day basis name is a unisex name, and he literally gave that to me because he did not want me to be discriminated against on job applications. So anyway, all that to say, I think I've been reflecting since his passing on how lucky I am that that's how he felt about his success in life, which was he worked really hard for it and had to overcome things, and that other people in life have to work really hard to overcome things, and that doesn't, like, that's not entitlement on their part. That's literally them just stating things as they are, and that those of us who are able to get ahead, it's incumbent upon us to be clear about the privileges that we've had as we've gotten ahead and to try to mitigate it for other people. Like, that's really, I think, a lot of what it means to be a good person in this world. So again, I just don't know if any of that made sense, and now I'm gonna be late for work, so it's a good thing that I picked a day where I could be a little late and it wouldn't be a problem. But anyway, we'll see if I post this. I'll try to edit this into something a little bit more coherent, but I guess I would just say, like, to the creators of color who've been talking about this, thank you for talking about something you shouldn't have to talk about over and over again. It's appreciated. To non-people of color, like, let's just try to do our best to be good allies. Let's listen. Let's be aware of our privilege and not say that that negates our accomplishments, but understand that it's not a barrier to us accomplishing things, and that other people aren't that lucky. So we need to be deliberate in listening to their voices and doing what we can to, like, chip away at our garden, to pull out the little weeds where we see them, and to just keep it punching. So I think that will do it for me. You know the drill. Like, subscribe, social media is below, whatever. I should go to work, and hopefully this was okay. We'll see if I post it. Anyway, love you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye!